You can join me in prayer. Most beloved Heavenly Parent, thank you so much for this evening. Thank you for our connected network of youth leaders and youth pastors from across the nation who are busily preparing for their upcoming winter workshops, Heavenly Father. I really pray that we can welcome you into this time as we get a chance to hear from our wonderful brother Andrew about this important topic that's really impacting youth and our culture these days, Heavenly Father. I pray that we can take what we can so that we can really support and empower our younger brothers and sisters to be righteous people and people who can really grow to become the sons and daughters that you are wanting them to become. We really want to welcome you in this time, and we offer all these things in the name of David and Kaylee Moffat of West Central Family. Aju. So thanks for coming, everybody. I'm very excited to see faces from all over the place. Very cool. We are fortunate enough to be able to hear from Andrew Love, who also happens to be my local pastor and friend and brother and many other things.
Keep it going.
Let's see how many I can name. Yeah, so everyone knows the topic. We're talking about pornography and keeping integrity and that kind of thing. And for us, we're framing this in the scope of a brother-sister night, which is when it mostly comes up in workshops, but you should feel free to use this content however you see would be valuable for your kids and your workshop. So without further ado, Andrew, take it away.
Yay! Wow, yay! Welcome, everybody. Or I'm welcome. I'm joining you. Sorry. Welcoming people. What's up? So, I mean, I have a bit of a presentation. I trimmed down. I've been going around to communities, and I'm going to be going to communities, and you guys can help make that happen, too, if you want me over there. But I'm starting a conversation because the more that I talk about porn and sexual integrity, the more I realize that it's something that people have been yearning to talk about, and nobody's talking about it, right? And it's really insane, you know. And the metaphor that I always use is that it's like a giant monster that walked into a room and started eating people one by one, and everybody's like, don't look at the monster, don't look at the monster, and like that doesn't solve the problem. And they're just not making eye contact with the monster instead of just figuring out how to use a chair to kill a monster or something, you know. So right now this is one thing that I want you to all to write down before we get started is puremind.online. So puremind.online. And that's a website that's created by John Williams and many other people. And it's specifically to answer like all your questions. There's a ton of blog, a ton of content, specifically for unificationists, how to deal with this issue. So most of the stuff that I'm going to tell you, you can learn online. I'm just trying to start a conversation. And that's the most important thing is that you guys get educated about this because, you know, one stat, like, okay, so basically I went to North Carolina for that summit. There's like a porn summit, an anti-porn, I have to specify anti-pornography summit because people get confused. But basically, I had no interest, or I don't know. I just felt like I should go, but I wasn't really interested in this issue. But then after that conference, I was like, "Holy crap! This is like World War, you know, like an internal World War, and it's just destroying so many blessed families. Like older, like people your parents' age are definitely being affected by this. People your age are absolutely getting affected by this, and the ages are getting younger and younger and younger." That people are getting exposed to hardcore porn, and the effects are pretty devastating. But a lot of it is that they don't have anybody to talk to about it, because you can reverse all these issues, you can reverse all these problems if you just learn how. Okay, so it's all about habits. So this talk, I mean, what I'm talking about is yes, pornography, but that's just kind of like the external result of other issues. Main thing that we like to focus on is sexual integrity and the idea of having a vision for your own sexuality, because that's super important. That's something that I've never even heard of up until recently, like the idea of, well, what type of person do you want to be in your own sexuality? And that starts now. Like how you are in your sex life while you're married starts now, because it's based on character. Because the honeymoon phase, you know, you know, that's like God's gift to you, where it's just like your instant attraction when you're married, you know, like everything's great. And then after a year or two, your reality kicks in, and then there's a whole person that you have to deal with en route to sex. And a lot of people, if they don't have good habits of like how to deal with not getting what you want instantly, they can go and start to inherit all these bad habits. And porn is definitely one. And I got to tell you, like, just to be honest, like, there's a ton of second-gen couples that are breaking up because of porn, straight up. There's a couple that where they're just finalizing their divorce right now. And the main issue is because the guy was totally addicted to porn, and it really affected the wife. So, I mean, that's kind of the heavy stuff. But I know you guys are dealing with this with your kids. And I was just speaking in the West Rock community on Sunday, and right after, I had a bunch of young guys come up to me, and they're like, you know, all these young kids are talking to us about this, and we don't know how. First of all, we don't know what to say. Second of all, we don't feel like we have the authority to tell them anything because we ourselves are struggling with this issue. So what are we supposed to do, right? So it's kind of like this broken chain. So I'm not expecting for you guys to resolve anything real quick, but the more that we start this conversation and understand that you, as well as everybody else in this world, is dealing with this issue. We're all dealing with this problem to some extent, whether it's personally or in your family or culturally. Can't avoid it. Okay, so I have a talk, and I'll try and just stick with the pertinent stuff because I want to give you guys time to ask questions, or and also write down my email if you want, because I know one time I was in New Jersey a couple weeks ago, and I had a conversation face to face with this guy. We were talking about other stuff, and then this came up. Why are you here in Jersey? And I told him. And then I left the room, and he Facebook messaged me, like, and he started asking me questions about this. And I was just in the room with him, like, I left the room, and because he just didn't want to talk to me face to face, and that's fine. So you guys can connect with me on Facebook, or John Williams is a good guy to talk to, or you can contact me by email. My email is andrewrobertlove@gmail.com. So also, if you feel stumped, you can kind of send people our way. But definitely puremind.online is a great resource to send, especially kids and parents and all that. Because in my own community, you know, I just heard about a kid who was on his way to a youth ministry event, and he, you know, some kid showed him something on his phone, and he's like, "What is this?" And then it's porn, you know. And they're like 10 or something around that. So it's everywhere. It's everywhere, you know. So I'm gonna share my screen, and then we're gonna get into this. There we go. I wish I had that ready. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. So again, like this is like a lot, and I've tried to cut it out as much as possible. And I'm gonna go get my phone to make sure I don't ramble on. But there's only so much I can do in like 30 minutes, you know. There's like, when I start talking about this, I start going off. So there's no way that I can answer all of your questions. But I just want to, again, this is a conversation. And another thing to note is that we're gonna have our own conference on porn. We're gonna like take a stance as a movement. It's gonna be at the IPAC April 7th. And everybody's invited. We're trying to get as many young people there as possible, youth ministry leaders, also, you know, CARP, you know, all these people. But you'll hear about that hopefully from your pastors. So basically, this is a talk. So here's this nice little PowerPoint that I made. Nice colors. And basically, I've broken it down into, like the DP, there's the ideal, and then there's the fall, the problem, and then there's restoration, so possible solutions. And I gotta move this thing so I can see. So this is a quote from True Father, and he said, "Among animals and plants, sex is only for the purpose of reproduction. Human beings are the exception. Within the conjugal relationship, they can enjoy sexual love freely. This is a privilege of human beings as lords of creation. God bless his children to enjoy love infinitely." That's why I use that quote, because part of our ideology is that what you do here on earth is what you take into the spirit world with you. So that's including your sex life, right? So if you're liberated in that sense, that's something that you get to experience eternally with your spouse in an uncomplicated way, just very wholesome. I love you, I want to show you, and you become one when two become one. Also, True Father said, high noon settlement is possible when there's no shadow. When the mind and body become one, the shadow disappears. When the couple becomes one, the shadow disappears. And I'm telling you, porn is a massive shadow in a relationship because it causes people to act weird. It's really bad. In our language, it's making a really bad condition. And I'll get into that in a second. But also, this is from the Bible. There's a quote, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I brought this up because, again, people make visions and mission statements for their companies, for their life. They have all these goals. But sexually, people just act in this very random way. They're just like, oh, I'm horny. And then it's very reactive. So they're always in the position of an object to their own sexuality, rather than having dominion and knowing what type of person they want to be in terms of their character and also in terms of their sexuality. And that's really important, actually, because when something comes into your path that's not in line with your own vision, you can tell very quickly and you can move it out of your way. Or if you have a habit of, say, pornography, you can start to unwind that and unravel that because you have internal motivation rather than just kind of, yeah, I guess I should, get rid of this bad habit. It's something inside. So having a vision, having a strong vision, this is something, again, that I've never heard of, and I've never seen any books about having a vision about your sexuality or anything. This is a new idea that's coming to light thanks to this discussion that we're having. So that's the ideal. And pornography, I'm going to spend most of my time talking about porn, but what is porn? So internet pornography is the largest unregulated social experiment in all of human history. And the reason is we've never had the internet before as humanity. But also, in terms of pornography, in the 90s, the federal government had the opportunity to make it so that you can't just stumble upon pornography, that you had to opt in. So you could end up in a website, but you had to click yes. But now we're at the point where I learned at this summit that people no longer seek after pornography. Pornography is seeking after people. So there's all this clickbait, and it's hard to avoid it almost. And doing research for this has been like walking on a landmine on stilts made out of grenades. It's super tricky to avoid this stuff. And also, I was talking to this guy. There's another good resource called Fight the New Drug. I suggest you check it out. They have a lot of really cool content, a lot of really good videos. They're kind of like the Hillsong of the anti-porn movement. They're actually from the Mormon church, these guys, but they don't advertise that, but they're really cool. And I talked to the guy that started it, and he said one point that's really important to stress is that a lot of your parents don't understand your pornography, our generation's pornography, because hardcore pornography on high-speed internet has all sorts of psychological implications. It does stuff to your brain that just looking at a magazine never did. So they're like, oh, it's all harmless, and it's really not the case. So I have a whole separate discussion on that point for parents. But if you have an open relationship with your parents, it's really something worth discussing. If not, through your pastor. Your pastor's a good John the Baptist for this conversation. And I always like to mention that, part of pornography is, I believe in a Satan, absolutely, or like a dark force. Like the good force wants us all to become one. The dark force wants us all to feel divided, even mind and body, everything divided, so we feel wrong. And so the idea is sometimes people, when I bring up this conversation, start to feel judged. And they start to feel like I'm talking to them like they're a bad person. That's not, you're God's child primarily. I'm a pastor, and I love reminding people of that. It's just pornography that's really, really heinous. It's really bad. And when you have a relationship with it, it's just like having a relationship with a self-destructive friend or a really destructive friend. It has an effect on you. So it's not you that's bad. Please don't feel judged. And many times when people engage in pornography or they have some sort of addiction, they go down this spiral of feeling like a piece of garbage, and I get that a lot in my conversations with young people, and it's simply not true. That's just Satan whispering in your ear. It's the porn that's bad. It's not you. So I've broken this down into the 3 blessings. So the first blessing is your brain. I talk about it like your brain on porn. And so basically there's a guy from Cambridge University who did a study. He mapped out the brain and he took scans of the brain of people who were addicted to pornography, and then he took scans of a brain of somebody who was addicted to methamphetamines and heroin, and their brains lit up in a similar fashion, meaning that they were fiendish. They became fiendish. I took one of the slides out, but basically, I'm sure you all know Gollum from Lord of the Rings. People addicted to anything become Gollum, and the ring becomes, the ring is like a metaphor for their addiction, right? So when they have it on, they feel powerful. They feel like they can take on the world. But that's also when the dark forces can see you, right? Those evil dark horsemen, that's when they come after you. And that's exactly when you engage in, you get a high, you feel great, you feel like a king or a queen. But actually, the downward trajectory is pretty harsh. So again, like the behaviors and the outcomes of an addict of porn is the same as methamphetamine. Like those meth addicts you see on the street without any teeth, or crackheads, like it's the same thing. Same effect. And so this is the cycle of addiction, right? So when you watch porn, when you engage in porn, you get this rush of dopamine, which is like this chemical that helps you feel great, right? So you get this rush, this huge rush. And dopamine is actually great. It's a survival thing. That's helped humanity stay alive, because when you have sex, it's like, bing, bing, good idea, good idea. That means more children, which means, safety in numbers and whatever. But also when you had sugary foods back in the day, they needed it because they'd go for days without food. If they found like a stash of honey, you get this rush of dopamine because your body's like, yes, we're stocking up on valuable calories, right? But in terms of porn, we get flooded with it because we're never meant to see so many images of sex, of different people. So like having one married person that you're married to is like a reasonable amount of dopamine, but seeing 20 at once, or whatever it is that you're observing while you're watching porn, is like this massive tsunami wave of dopamine. So what ends up happening is when you get this flood of dopamine, it releases a molecule known as delta phosphate, which in turn causes, like it etches a new pathway in your brain. So basically the best metaphor that I can think of is like, it's like a dam, and when you get a flood of dopamine, it starts to crack the dam, the water comes rushing down, and then it creates these new streams, and those streams are kind of the way that you relate. So when you get stressed out, you know where to go to feel better, right? That's that delta phosphate. It rewires you. It's a new reward system, right? So here's the cycle of an addict's brain. So first of all is sensitization. So that means that you get triggered more easily the more that you engage in pornography. So you'll see this, and when it becomes a habit, you could just be on Facebook, right, and just be looking at a good-looking, if you're a guy, just looking at, a good-looking friend, and then all of a sudden that becomes a trigger then to check out the next thing and the next thing, and all of a sudden you're watching pornography again. So the more that you engage in porn, the more you become sensitized and easily triggered. So it's like more landmines get added to the field. Next is desensitization, which means just like in drugs, like if you're addicted to drugs, eventually you need more of the same drug to get the same rush of dopamine to feel that high. And the same with pornography. You either have to watch more, or you have to watch more kind of kinky, fetishy stuff, and you go down this path of you end up watching stuff that you would never normally justify, but you start to crave it more because you're desensitized to what used to give you that rush. Also hypofrontality. So that's your prefrontal cortex. And basically that's the part of your brain that helps you make decisions on like, what's right or wrong, kind of like your conscience, right? And this becomes numb the more that you engage in addictive behavior. So porn is no different. And I have some stats later, but basically, people who are engaged heavily in pornography justify watching some really bad stuff that isn't aligned with the person that they want to be, which is part of this guilt that comes after watching porn, because you end up feeling guilty because you know you've done something wrong. You feel it intuitively. But your brain in the moment becomes numb, and also generally your lifestyle becomes much more foggy. Like what's right or wrong becomes a lot more unclear. And then the last thing is dysfunctional stress circuits. So this cycle is like, and this is the last one, is you become stressed out more easily. So part of that numbing of the front of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, is you get numb to things that you used to find pleasure in. So the simple things in life that you used to find, like hanging out by a tree and reading a book, playing, hopscotch with your friends. I don't know if anybody still plays hopscotch, but things like that, simple pleasures, they become less enjoyable because they're not as enjoyable as this incredible high. And that's when that kind of Gollum side starts to come in. You start to know where that high is, and you know where to go back to, especially, is what I'm saying, you guys are in college, a lot of you, or beyond. Life can be stressful. And if you have these dysfunctional stress circuits, like, you know where to go for comfort, and it becomes pornography. If you've trained your body to react in that way and your mind to kind of work together to feel that, it's like a drug. So porn versus the second blessing. That's like relationships. So porn confuses love and intimacy. So in terms of relationships, it's like, it's fake, right? It's fantasy. So porn never says no. So when everybody else in your life, your parents, whoever's, your teachers giving you bad grades, well, porn is always there for you 24 hours a day. You got a phone anywhere you want, anytime, right? Also, it never has opinions, so it never goes against you because you have your choice of an infinite amount of porn to watch. Also, it never gains weight or gets older. How perfect is that, right? So it's not real. It becomes this fantasy, and it becomes an addiction to this fantasy. So it also destroys your sex life. So this is a part of the conversation that I've been having is, talking to the spouses of people who are addicted to pornography. They become so addicted to the porn that they cannot enjoy actual real sex with a human being because they've trained their body to be aroused by something that's fake on a screen, right? So it causes all sorts of sexual dysfunction. Also, as youth pastors, you should know the earlier that kids get into this, the more damage it does to them, by the time they're in their 20s and beyond. It's really hard to reverse the effects if somebody got into it young and stuck with it. And so the idea of fantasy versus reality is that the more time you spend in fantasy, and this is also video games, it's like, anything that where you're avoiding reality, is your reality starts to fall apart and you start to crave your fantasy life more and more. And your fantasy becomes your reality, and your reality becomes something that you want to avoid altogether. And so people become addicted to the sense of, also when you're on the internet, you're the king, you're the queen, you can do whatever you want and nobody can tell you what to do. But in real life, people do tell you what to do. There are rules, there's consequences. Also, it segments humans into parts. So you start to sexualize people more. Your brain, you start to train your brain to sexualize people rather than seeing them as God's children. You see them as people who can pleasure you, or so your thinking becomes pornified. So this whole idea of the pornification of the brain is that everything is, it's like wearing porn glasses. Situations start to arise where you start to imagine it like you're watching a porn. You start to see it like that. So we've been seeing it divide individuals and couples. It causes personal shame and darkness in a lot of couples. And, there's the most, how do I phrase this? The demographic of humans in America which is growing the fastest of people who are addicted to porn are young women in their early 20s. And that's something I had no idea of. I thought, I was trained my whole life to believe that pornography for a woman was those romantic novels where the men all have long hair and buff, that you see in the supermarkets. But the world is becoming more pornified, and more women are falling into this trap too. But either side, whatever side is addicted, the other side also many times doesn't know how to deal with it, and they start blaming and accusing and saying all this, and that can cause a great deal of shame on both sides. And it becomes a wall between the couple, and it's essentially like having a third person in your marriage, because when the person who should be talking to you isn't talking to you, instead they're dealing with their problems through fantasy, it feels like they're avoiding you and going to this other person. So cultural, third blessing. Porn images stay with you wherever you go. And if you think about this, right, if you really think about this, the idea of pornification of the world, like Disney movies are not porn, obviously, but many people who are making them, the lighting people, whatever, if they're watching porn, then it's going to affect the way that they think and stuff in, stuff out. It affects you, right? So culturally speaking, we're living in a world that's tainted by people who are engaged in porn. And it shapes our culture. It really does shape our culture. And I tried to find more tame pictures, but somebody showed me a presentation today about the sexualization of children. And to me, again, just from a theological perspective, I see that the end game. And when I went to this conference, I came back after the second day and I cried my eyes out because, and this is probably why I felt called to really fight this battle, is because I saw that the end game of pornography is to take away people's purity and their feeling of self-worth and beauty, internal beauty, as which is their gift from God. And porn takes that away because it makes you feel dirty, and it's getting younger and younger. This is another fact, okay? The most searched term in Pornhub, which is like the YouTube of pornography, is teen, right? I don't think that's a coincidence. I feel like that's where Satan's going after, is taking away people's innocence, because if they're robbed of their innocence or sense of innocence, then Satan has a lifetime customer, right? But the other thing is good, because I want to let you know that you can regain your purity in your heart. You can absolutely do that. And that's something I wanted to learn when I joined this church. I wasn't looking for God. I wasn't looking for a church. I wanted to know if my heart could be pure again. And the answer is absolutely yes. You can regain a heart of a child, but it takes a lot of work to regain that. But we're living in a culture which, really sexualizes young people. Also, another fact is the younger a man starts viewing hardcore porn, the more hardwired he becomes. So if somebody starts watching porn when they're 10 and then they want to quit when they're 20, it's going to be way harder for them than somebody who starts watching porn when they're 40 and wants to quit when they're 50, because their brain is still developing so much when they're young. So it's harder. But again, it's still possible, but it takes a lot of concerted effort and a lot of support. So there's a guy named Alfred Kinsey. They made a movie about him, but Hollywood made it, and they made him seem like a really cool guy, but he's actually a pedophile. And he did sexual things with 4-month-old kids and called it science. But he said that the only unnatural sex act is that which you cannot perform. And from him, it's kind of heavy. I don't know if you guys want to research this guy, but from him came this kind of whole sexual justification culture where anything is normal. He said, whatever feels good, just do it, just follow that impulse, which is totally counter to, leading by your conscience and treating other people like humans rather than just your own personal sex objects. So in terms of your generation, it's still up for grabs. Like, it's not game over at all, guys, because this conversation, one guy likened it to this. When cigarettes, used to be considered healthy, like really healthy. Like, they used to have commercials where they'd be like a doctor in a doctor's jacket and he'd be smoking a cigarette and be like, you should do what I do. Or it'd be like, 3 out of 5 doctors say that you're a genius if you smoke cigarettes, and stupid stuff like that, right? And it took many scientists to be like, actually, I think it's bad for you. And then they'd try to discredit that scientist. And then there more and more that popped up. The same exact phenomenon is happening with pornography, where the first wave of people in the 90s tried to say that this is bad. They got squashed, and porn just has run rampant. And now more and more people are stepping up saying, no, I know this is wrong. And so it's creating this upswell of a revolt. But one thing is, that I was talking about the prefrontal cortex and decision-making. There's another organization, if you want to check it out, called Barna, the Barna Group. I think it's barna.com. They're a statistics group and Christian, and they did a study, and they found that, more young adults found that not recycling was a higher crime than watching porn. But if you can imagine, they also did a study where they took, a group of guys, and they asked them a bunch of questions. What's right? What's wrong? So they'd be like, is sex without consent right or wrong? And they all answered pretty much, like on the side of their conscience. And then they got that group to watch 4 hours of hardcore porn. And then they asked them the same questions. And all of a sudden, like some weird miracle, they started to get really confused about their morality. And they were like, well, given the right circumstance, or it depends on, like it became very relative. So when people are viewing porn, again, their sense of what's right or wrong or good or bad or up and down gets more confused. So I personally love this slide. It's kind of ridiculous because I always look at that little girl swinging under the floating island, and I think, I don't know if that's God's ideal. That seems really dangerous to me. But you get the gist of this picture that, at the end of the day, God just wants us all to be free to be ourselves and to support one another and live in that type of modality. And when you're living up to your ideals, you feel like that. But when you're living in a way that's very reckless or hurtful to yourself or to others, it starts to divide you from your friends, divide you from your family, divide you from yourself. And that's what really porn does to people, is it really causes them to feel really bad about themselves and to dislike themselves. So this is kind of my guilt trip, but I had to put it in here because it's true. I didn't want to avoid telling the truth, but basically when people support porn, sometimes they see, oh yeah, no, it's all just, everybody likes it. They're just actors, they're getting paid, and that's, first of all, a lie. The average lifespan of a porn star is between 6 and 18 months. And then after that, what happens? Well, they get kicked out, they get flushed down the toilet, and also when women show up, there's some testimonies online of ex-pornography stars, and they say that it's such a chauvinistic, male-dominated world that, many times, this actress, she would show up to a set and they would change what her agreement was, and they'd get her to do stuff that she did not want to do. But they said, if you don't do it, then you'll never work in this town again. And so it's really, it's all an act. It's absolutely an act. Those people don't like each other. They don't care for each other. So if you support porn, you'll be supporting a sexualized society, which is, basically where a rape culture, all this stuff that we see in colleges, a lot more rape, because people are so primed up from watching these images of essentially rape. A lot of porn is centered on men raping women. Human trafficking. So what ends up happening is a lot of people who get trafficked, say from in Holland, there's the red light district. A lot of those women are coming from the Philippines, from Southeast Asia, and they get used for live sex, for having sex, but then also they record it because they try to make as much money out of them as possible. Sexual tourism, that's like, just same as in Denmark in Holland, the red light district, but also there's, many countries in Southeast Asia. I met a guy who tries to help women escape from that, but there's something like 20,000 brothels in Vietnam, some huge number, and guys come, bankers, school teachers, whatever, coming from Europe, from America to go have sex with these young women. So porn and the blessing. Guys, I know this is heavy. It comes back around. It's okay. Don't worry. Things are going to be okay. I'm not fighting this because I'm fighting a losing battle. We're not on the Titanic, okay? We're on like a Rambo vessel with machine guns, and we're going to kill Satan. Don't worry. We're going to win this thing. So in terms of the blessing, many blessings, like I said, are being destroyed by porn because we haven't been having this conversation. There's so many couples that they don't even tell their friends because they're so ashamed. They don't tell their parents. They don't tell anybody. Now that we're asking, like I have a group, okay? I'm meeting with a group of young guys in our community, and I asked them, how many of you, first of all, they're all watching porn, first of all. Second of all, I asked them, how many of you are talking about this stuff with your parents? One guy said he talks to his dad semi-frequently, but he feels so bad when he kind of makes a mistake, when he has a slip-up, that he just stopped talking to his dad because he didn't want to be judged. And the other guy said once 10 years ago, his dad busted him for watching porn because he was, cleaning up the computer and he saw a bunch of files. And his dad was like, you shouldn't be doing this, right? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, okay. And then never another conversation. So talking about this, if you can with your parents, openly, if not with somebody, I'll get to that in a bit. Many young men don't feel qualified to get blessed. So there's way more. If you go to the international matching website, there's like double the amount of women, young ladies, than there are young men. And I have no doubt in my mind that this is an issue, because a lot of the guys that I'm talking to, they just, if you see a lot of guys that end up leaving the church or end up leaving God or end up just leaving the person that they were striving to be. A lot of it is because pornography deflates them. It causes them to feel like a lesser human being. And then they just kind of go with that. And because there's no support, there hasn't traditionally been support in our church in this area. So what can we do? I don't know why I chose that image. I just kind of liked it. I guess that's us. I don't know. It's cool, right? So I love this quote: addiction is born in secrecy and dies in community. So especially if you think about porn, it's this thing that's done in the dark, by yourself, and hope nobody sees you doing this thing. But it dies when you become honest. The idea of a high noon era, that's what we're supposed to be in, is when you have no secrets, when you can just be free to be yourself. And that doesn't mean perfect. That means a work in progress, but being open and honest about it. So part of it is forming a community. So when you meet these young people, we need to be able to form a community, create an open, safe conversation for them to have. So I've kind of identified, so I got to move Kaylee's face so that I can see. Oh God, made this worse. I can't see anything now.
You can minimize the thumbnails and make them go away.
How?
That underscore, push that above the thumbnails.
This guy?
I don't know. I can't see what you're doing.
Oh, here we go. I'm gonna shrink you. Sorry guys, just lost all the momentum here. So in terms of solutions, yes, this is the first level, right? So passive. So there's passive, reactive, and then there's proactive. So the passive is like the bronze package, It's not quite the platinum level, but it's something, right? So that's to get educated. We have a blog, subscribe to that. We also have a forum, join that. Right? If you want to know, we have a ton of information out there that's waiting for you guys to engage with. In terms of the reaction or the reactive mid-level, accountability, if you know anybody who wants to get over this, who've identified, I'm watching porn, I don't want to. Many young guys who are, trying to get to the matching are trying to get clean before they get to that. And if you guys, also Pure Mind Online has a Facebook page. And if you go to that, I interviewed Sungkook Burns, who's out in New Jersey, who talked about his own addiction. And that was his incentive for getting free of porn, is that he wanted to go to his future spouse and say, I used to have this problem, but I'm coming into this blessing clean. I don't have this problem anymore. So he had a very clear plan. So anyway, having accountability is super important. It's almost impossible to do it without accountability. So if you want to help somebody, so that if you're a youth minister and you want to help another person, become their accountability partner. That means that, to be there for them when they need you, and also to keep them accountable. That might mean they text you every day to let you know how you're doing, right? But there's also, since we're living in the era of the internet, there's something called Our Tribe, which is an app you can get on your phone, and it's like a community accountability app. And I know a lot of people have been using that, and it's really cool. It's free. And basically you have an avatar, and that avatar starts to go red if you forget to check in, and then people can check up on you and say, how are you doing? Did you have a slip up or whatever it is? Also, Covenant Eyes, we still have it for super cheap. Like Pure Mind is paying the majority of it. I think it's like $5 or something a month, or maybe less, but maybe we can even just cover that. But Covenant Eyes essentially is something you put on your computer, on your phone, on any device, and then you get somebody that you want to be accountable to put it on their device, and then they can tell which websites you're going to. Because when you get on your computer, part of it is people think, I'm all alone, I can do whatever I want. But in reality, first of all, Google knows everywhere you've been, so don't think like you're not leaving traces. But if you know that somebody is watching your habits, then you become much more aware. But it doesn't work. I tell all parents this: don't put this on your kid's computer. Don't just put it on their computer. You have to ask them. It has to be voluntary. But if you know anybody who wants to be accountable and open about where they're going on their phone and on their computer, then Covenant Eyes is awesome. And again, it's super discounted on because we sponsor it, because we just want people to have it. Also, we have mentor training. I'm training to be a mentor. I am taking care of one group here in my local community, but I'm also allowing people, I do it on Zoom too, So I'm just trying to help people get over this. We got to fight this. So if you struggle with this issue, find an accountability partner. That's somebody, accountability is somebody who's in a similar boat as you, right? Somebody who knows your struggle that you can just be honest and accountable to. Sign up for Covenant Eyes, like I was just talking about, and get a mentor. A mentor is somebody who's beyond you, who's struggled with what you had and has risen above and now no longer struggles, because they can help lift you up. So the secret is, if you want to get over it, you need the willpower. First of all, you need to really want to get over this, but also you need an accountability partner and a mentor. So what can the community do? Become owners of a heavenly sex culture. That means talking about it. We need a non-judgmental environment. We need to uplift people and not let them feel ashamed, because honestly, this is a problem that's existed since, if you believe in principle, since the beginning of Adam and Eve, right? It was a sex problem due to some sort of emotional, disorder. But we've been struggling with it. And now it's at the point where it's just kind of like, blah! Satan's just like, I'm here. He's naked walking around. He's looking for a fight, right? So all the cards are on the table. So we have to kind of acknowledge that it's there, and then, create a game plan for how we're going to overcome it. We need to start the conversation. Our church is scared stiff. If you ask, I didn't hear anybody when I joined this church, nobody would say the word sex. If they wanted to talk about sex, like when I was joining, they would always call it chop tattoo. Like all my spiritual mom, she'd always say chop tattoo. And I was like, what is that? And she'd talk about starting family. I'm like, are you talking about sex, or like, are they pregnant? Like what? They won't even say the word. So we at least have to start the conversation and owning this conversation. And if, as a young person, as a single person, it's really important for you to have a clear vision of the type of spouse that you want to be. That's all you can control. You can't control what the other person is, but you can control the person that you want to be. That means habits. All of our everything we're made up of is just habits. So what kind of habits do you want? Good habits or bad habits, right? So also, I want to let you know, I have an Instagram. I make memes that kind of make fun of pornography. It's supposed to denigrate pornography and uplift people. And we have the Facebook page at Pure Mind Online, and we're constantly updating that with articles, any videos that I can find that are good. And that's just that's just our beginning. Pure Mind is made up of 4 people. One person who's extremely rich, who's donated. Last year, he gave $250,000 to fight this cause, because he wants to end this, because he has a bunch of kids and he doesn't want them to have to deal with this. And then a bunch of other people like me who are just kind of like already not so much time on my plate, but I feel that this is one of the biggest battles that we face. So if you guys, just follow us. It's just the beginning, but we're trying to meet people where they're at. So people are always on Facebook, so we just created a Facebook page. Okay, I tried to rush. I'm sorry. We still have 10 minutes though. But that's wait, God bless you.
Andrew, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Let's clap for him. That was really great.
How do I unshare?
The top button on the screen.
Oh, wait, stop share.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, thank you for your passion, your knowledge, your research, and your ability to translate it to our community. Thank you for that. Great job.
Sí, señora.
I want to echo some of your thoughts just to bring it down to what can be brought into a workshop setting.
Sure.
Some of the points I felt like were really relevant. Is first of all, educating yourself to know about it and know what's really going on and what it's doing to you. So I really encourage in some way, shape, or form to make that happen in a workshop. And I really liked Andrew's emphasis on having a vision for yourself first and letting that be the primary point of education instead of us, what usually happens, and most of it comes up in a brother's night and it sometimes come up in a sister's night, but mostly what happens is, it's an awkward room and finally one guy talks about it and then the other guy's like, yeah, I'm in the same situation. Then you give some tips and that kind of thing. But if the point of conversation can first be about what kind of spouse you want to be in your future marriage, then how you talk about pornography in this kind of situation is so much more natural and not so awkward. And then the last thing, I really liked his suggestion about the accountability partner. And I feel like that could be a really good takeaway from the workshop. You know, a lot of times when you do boys' nights and girls' nights, it's hard because a lot of dark stuff comes out and we're always looking for ways to spin it positively. But this is a perfect way to spin it positively is okay, we've talked about this, now what are we actually going to do moving forward? And then maybe as a team leader or a brother or a sister, you know, checking in with those people and say, hey, have you talked to your accountability partner, and reinforcing that idea. So this webinar is really perfect because a lot of the education is taken care of by Andrew. So hopefully, I mean, I see everybody taking fantastic notes, which is awesome. Excellent, excellent. But take that and then they're really focusing on, you know, your vision and then accountability partners. This could be such a great revolution for how we tackle this problem in youth ministries. Did you want to add, Andrew?
Well, I just wanted to say that like the mentor training is it's like an online course, and we're gonna eventually turn into training mentors ourselves. But we're trying to get mentors in every community. So if you know anybody who really cares about this issue, or if you yourselves, then to get trained isn't really complicated. There's a lot to it. We're learning from this guy who's been a mentor for like 15 years, and he has a crazy history. But he's this Christian guy. He's super cool. He really likes our church. He's going to be speaking in Las Vegas. But the idea is it's like a small group, and you got to meet every week. Accountability, but having a mentor there is really important too, because your accountability partners are kind of where you're at, so they don't have as many answers. But it's good to have that, at least that's like a starter. But to also have somebody that you can talk to who isn't struggling with it, footing is more solid. And we're trying to get that into every community. We're trying to get pastors awake and involved. And also just to let you know, every single matching advisor that I've ever spoken to says that like 99.99% of the guys that I speak to who are interviewing as matching candidates are in some way, shape, or form struggling with this. And an ever-growing number, like in Texas, the pastor there was like, and like except for 2 of the girls that he's interviewed are also in some way, shape, or form dealing with this issue. So not to justify it. That's one reason people get scared of saying hey, it's a problem, everybody struggles, because then it's like, oh, then we're all screwed, right? No. The idea is that we're all kind of in a similar boat, but the boat is drifting towards a healthier place, right? But just to kind of open it up to be like, okay, let's just kind of admit that this is a massive crisis and start from there. Yeah.
Good.
So that's all.
Good point. Thank you. Does anybody want to, we have a couple of minutes left. Does anybody want to ask a question or clarify on a point or echo a point? Let me change my view here. You can just wave. Yoshika, hold on. You're muted. Wait a second. Go ahead.
So you mentioned that getting a mentor is important and like having accountability partners and stuff. But I'm sure at this point, none of the staff at our workshop is mentors. And so if a kid comes up to us, then who can we guide them to? Or is there like a list of mentors that we can have to?
Yeah. So I don't think it's up on Pure Mind online, but we are going to have a separate page where we're going to list and have people's faces. So like if you know somebody or if you feel like you check a person, right now we have about like 5. And we're trying to multiply that exponentially, but we're really, it's such a nascent issue. But so you can like give them my email and I can plug them in. Or where are you, Yoshika?
I'm at Coho, so it's District 6 and 7.
I don't know.
Indiana, like Michigan.
Chicago,
Ohio. Indiana.
Oh, Indiana. I don't know who's out there. But anyway, if you let me know your pastor, or you can connect me with your pastor, like that's really important too, because your pastors, your head pastors, and all the parents need to really understand what's going on because they have no idea. I mean, they have some idea, but they don't really to the extent of the problem, that there's little reaction so far. So I'm stirring the pot, and I definitely would love to talk to the pastor out there if you want to connect them to prepare you, because another good point is you should be preparing your head pastors too, or whoever, district pastor or whatever, and let them know that that they should be prepared to answer some of these questions, right? Because I was just out in New York, like I said, and I've been speaking in a couple different places, but this time I prepared with the pastor and said, what can be some action steps so that we're not just coming in cold. So you might even want to talk to your pastor, hey, if this issue comes up, what do you think we should do? Do you want to connect with David Wolfenberger or John Williams or Andrew Love? And just to kind of preemptively assume that this is going to come up, talk to your pastors.
It's a really excellent point. I just want to echo that. Let's help our pastors be empowered and actually make a difference in our community. So please reach out to your pastors and include them in this. Who else has a question, thought, comment? Gabby?
Yeah, I just have like a lot of just questions about how to approach this when talking to girls. Just because like porn as a whole, like, I don't know, I feel like it's very taboo when you talk to girls, like they feel or it doesn't seem as common, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, I guess I was just wondering, like, what steps could I take in approaching this? Because I was like thinking, like, what if there's not a lot of girls that have this problem in our community? What if it's only like one or two? I don't want to single them out.
Like I said, it's so early in the conversation that I would just make yourself very available after the talk, and especially social media, or because a lot of times they might not raise their hand, but they do have a question, and then you can start educating them through sending them articles and sending them validation that you're not in this alone. Because again, it's you guys are at a workshop, so this is an issue that has taken years to form, and you're not going to resolve it in a conversation. But if you can initiate the trust, this is the other thing you should know, is that if somebody comes to you and they're sharing, it's taken a lot of courage for them to do that. And if we make them feel bad about it, they might go back and never share it again.
Yeah.
So just to receive it well, and just to be like, even admit, I don't really know, but are you willing to explore this together? And then just communicate and make it more of a conversation. Because that's what I'm really emphasizing, that has to be a national conversation. And then I'm supposed to go to Korea and Japan next year and start talking about this too. And that's they're totally different culture. They do not want to talk about this at all. They're they're not even having babies in Japan. And the sad reality is, I heard 8% of second gen are even getting to the blessing out there. And just culturally, not just in our church, but in Japan in general, women have just kind of accepted that their men are watching porn, and it's just kind of like a cultural norm. And so to approach that is I'm kind of coming in through the side door in America, so when I go to Japan, I have to crash. I have to come down through the chimney. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, it's a conversation. Just remember, it's a conversation. Nothing can be resolved in an instant. That's just to make ourselves feel better. But in all honesty, it's going to take a little while, and there's going to be some bumps. But don't panic. It's just okay, it's okay. It's all going to be okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Just to jump back to Gabby's point, because I was curious how the sisters would make this work. I do think at this point in the way society is going, it's good to talk about it no matter what, because even if they're not, engaging in it, they are aware of it. And also, the other side of it for sisters is I feel like there's this concept about brothers and not understanding the full reality of what's going on, but also not coming at it as a judgmental kind of thing. there's just like this, with girls, there's this disconnect between what's happening in society, especially with our brothers, and you know, we have to be good sisters. You know what I mean? So I just encourage sisters to have this conversation no matter what, to empower yourself as a girl, and not. I think for girls, when we're having this problem with pornography, it impacts our self-esteem more than anything, and creates this idea of this is how we're supposed to be in our sex life, and that's not how you can be in your sex life. It just doesn't work like that. So yeah, I think that's really important for girls to hear and be empowered for their future. Absolutely.
And, you know, to also be prepared for the conversation you're going to have with your future spouses who are, you know, going to have a history, and to not freak out, because that's the culture of not talking about it. It's like, wait, you have a problem? And then a lot of people just end up running the other way, and because it's just
Okay, anybody else? Okay. First of all, let's thank Andrew. I feel like I can speak for everybody. This was really an informative and helpful and empowering session. Thank you, Andrew. Everybody say thank you.
Thank you.
And he's definitely there to contact. He's very reachable, this guy. So don't feel like he just put his name out there and is never going to talk to you again. He's there for sure.
Yeah. And this is the beginning too, right? So, but I honestly believe that this is going to be the issue that is going to separate us from the pact, because I was talking to this Mormon. She's like a second or third gen. She's like super powerful. I invited her out to Las Vegas, and she was like, "Oh my God, yes, thank you so much." She's the type of person that I'd never normally approach, because I think she's too high profile, but she's like eager to get in on this. So I really feel like we're going to be able to talk to Muslim people, Jewish people, all these people to help them resolve this. But first we have to resolve this in our own family, within our own selves, and our own, you know, personal families, our communities. We got to really, you know, grapple with it. So it's just the beginning. I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you for dealing with all these little rugrats. What are they called? Ankle biters?
No, they're way above that, bro. They're teenagers.
Oh, wow. Even harder.
Yes. Andrew, can I ask you to close in prayer?
I don't pray anymore. So.
Oh, okay. We're in that kind of church?
Yes. Yes. Please join me, everybody. And please mute yourselves if you have a radio. Thank you. Heavenly Parent, I love you so much, and I know everybody here loves you. That's why we're here, because we want to connect other people to you, and they have the opportunity and responsibility to take care of the next generation, and this generation has a lot on their shoulders. They have a lot of issues that are kind of creeping up on them, but I know that we can lighten their load by dealing with some of these issues ourselves, especially in the realm of sexuality, to help them to be clear, because the less complicated you are in that area, the more enjoyable life is. So I really pray blessings upon these people too, that they can enjoy integrity, and also that they can have amazing marriages, and that they can help guide and have amazing workshops that are transformative for these young people, and also transformative for them, and that they can see people's hearts change. So I pray that you can work. I know you are working already, but I pray that they can see it and feel how powerful you are in working through them. And I really pray for all their respective workshops to go exceptionally well, better than they can even imagine, and that you can really start to help the next generation get even stronger and more empowered. And I love you, and I offer you this prayer and this meeting together on behalf of all these really cool people. And I report this prayer in the Love Family name. Aju.
Aju. Thank you, everybody.